Hey guys, Verbal95, recording live from the local county prison cell. I'm just gonna do another analysis that I found somewhere. If I will say though, I feel like giving the guy a shout out. I don't know if he's okay with. I haven't like discussed this with him or anything, but fuck it, I'm not big enough to sue or anything, so that's fine. But there's a guy on YouTube. His name is the Grand Bull, right? Grandbull, right? And he does these. It's really cool. He does these death battle trailers, like the style that they do death battle in now, and they're like 30 seconds, but they're so because it's such a simple platform. They're so easy to like replicate, and they're really cool. So I did get this fight from one of his. It's gonna be Infinite from Sonic, more specifically Sonic Forces, and Majora from Zelda, more specifically Majora's Mask. This is gonna be a long ass video, so I'm trying to hurry this up. Um, on paper, this fight looks very like you've got a god versus not a god. But then I really started looking into it. And I'm like, now that I think about this is like it just looked like a badass idea, and then I looked up the shit, and I'm like, wow, so this is really not what I was expecting. So let's just go into it really. Okay, so Infinite. I'm gonna start with Infinite. He was a mercenary. He's a coyote, by the way. He was a mercenary who was he was very talented at being a mercenary. He was very he he was a really good reputation. Led a tribe pack, I don't know, of coyotes on like a lot of missions. Got his ass handed to him by Shadow. And from then had like an obsession with getting more powerful and never losing and all of that, which later shapes his character down the road, I guess. Then fuck, what was it called? Then he gets imbued with an item called the Phantom Ruby, which is it's supposed to be an item that's more powerful than the Chaos Emeralds, more powerful than the Master Emeralds. I would assume the Super Emeralds, even though I guess they're not technically canon, but whatever. Um, Eggman helps him with that, obviously, but yeah, he gets imbued with the Phantom Ruby, which uh, essentially lets him create. They're called virtual realities, so they're basically just illusions. He does this by interfering with the target's visual reception, and also feeding their brain false information so they experience the event as if it were real. But then that's kind of superfluous because later down the line we find out that he can actually, or I guess earlier and later, we find out that he can actually make these virtual realities interact with reality. So essentially, he can manipulate reality, which is never a power you should give to a character that ends up losing. Because then the argument is just why didn't he just do this? But whatever. So with this ability, he's done things like turn the world on its axis. He's made giant clones of himself. He's made himself bigger, made himself stronger and faster. Right? He was able to make himself faster than Sonic, which is, Death Battle will tell you is Sonic is 700 something miles an hour, This guy was basically able to just instantaneously teleport pretty much to the point where he looked like Sonic was moving, and this guy looked like he just, just like teleported. Um, he's able to knock out entire armies with just like a wave. He's able to create basically copies of other people, equally as strong or stronger in some cases. Though I think I'll get into later why gravity. He's just manipulate reality, which makes him theoretically capable to do whatever he wants at that point. If you can just manipulate reality, I don't think he has complete control over it, but I believe he's able to do. He's able to do a lot. He's able to shoot energy. He's able to fly. He does all this crazy stuff. And not only was he able to manipulate reality and use these abilities against Oh, and then the biggest feat was that he created an artificial sun and was going to basically have it crash down on the resistance. And yeah, so I believe the criteria is that the person has to be under the Phantom Ruby's control, as in they have to, I guess he has to, I guess it's like an Eisen thing where, once they see it, they subconsciously make it, subconsciously believe it, and then once they believe it, it becomes real or whatever. Something like that. I don't know. They never go into it like super. And then some properties of the Phantom Ruby, they had a lot of prototypes which are capable of generating and canceling out generating the same sort of power and also canceling out the powers of the other rubies. He doesn't have a prototype though. He has like the finished version, and but the downside is that they have to be activated by an individual, and only the individual that activates them is able to use the power. That's how the Avatar is able to, use the Phantom Ruby against him. Which again I'll get into later in some specifics. And it is powered by a power source, and it is capable of running out of power. But the power source, it not only has a power source and a backup power source that keep it generated indefinitely. Now those later got destroyed in the game, but I feel like in a death battle they'd probably have him at, full power. Um, he is capable of being harmed, like normally. Like he can prevent himself from being harmed by manipulating reality, but he is capable of being harmed. Like he feels a punch just the same as anyone else. And a lot of this is attributed to just his arrogance and just his ego. He blatantly, doesn't kill characters that he could have easily killed. He, gives everyone second chances. He lets people run away and shit. He doesn't, he holds back and doesn't use his full power. He, could have won if they had tactically retreated, like Eggman suggested. But, he's like, no, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to keep our forces at the front line and everything. So, he makes a lot of obvious mistakes just for the sake of, having his ego. Now, let's move on to Majora, because, again, I'm trying to get this done really quickly, because there's a lot to unpack here. So, Majora is a godlike being of chaos, right? There's no... I'm going to try to refer to it as it, because I think it's genderless. So there is, there's no real definition of what it is, or what its powers are, or where it came from. I mean, there's stuff in the manga, but that's considered non-canon for some reason, even though it's a perfect explanation for every question that's in the Zelda lore, but whatever. We just know that, the Triforce is the combined power, not the total combined power, but some of the essence of the power of the three goddesses, and Majora is capable of all three elements of the Triforce, for courage, wisdom, and power, right? So, not that Majora is as strong as three goddesses, but it is capable of using the full spectrum of their powers. Now, again, the powers are never really defined. It is god-like abilities, but we don't know that it's like we don't know that it's like infinite, where we know some of the details, so we can kind of extrapolate what it's able to do. We know very specific things that it's able to do. Like, it was able to crash the moon or attempt to crash the moon onto a city. It's able to fire, beams of energy. It's able to, quote unquote, curse people to, turn them into children, turn them into different races, turn them into animals and stuff like that. It's capable of allowing flight, invisibility, teleportation, and most of the time it likes to have a host. The general opinion of that is that it can't use its full abilities unless it has a host, which in the instance that it was Skull Kid. And much like the Skull Kid, Majora's emotions also allow it to, be defeated easier. Like it's very temper tantrumy, very, chaotic, very, just wants to pull pranks on people, see them, be downtrodden and all that. Um, so the full spectrum of its, like I said, the full spectrum of its abilities are pretty unknown. I don't think we can assume that it can do everything that all the other Magic users imbued with the like everything that Link, Zelda, and Ganon can do because they're imbued with the Triforce and it has the full spectrum of the But we've seen it do very specific things in multiple cases. So I would assume that it's only capable of doing what we've seen it do, or something relatable to that. Um, Now it does not need a host, and it is actually capable of not only acting independently but also giving itself a physical form. It was able to, what was it? It was Majora's Mask, Majora's Essence or something, right? Like Majora's Mask, Majora's uh avatar or embody or some embodiment or something, and then the weird gestury looking thing, and then Majora's Wrath, which is the big monster tentacle whip guy. Um, so it is capable of doing that. I would think that those are the limitations of its form, simply because it was only transforming after it had been beaten in a previous form, and B, it was able to, like, with all the magic we've seen it use, and that's the finality of the form. Like, I feel like that's not. I feel like that's probably not. It could have made itself, 50,000 feet tall or something if it wanted to. Like, why would it settle on that? Um. So I would think like that's the extent of its that's like closer to its actual form, and it's not able to generate a false form and just manipulate itself. It was, however, able to not only teleport to the moon, but it was also able to create an illusionary, like a false world on that moon. However, and this is something I was going to bring up later as well, that the moon in Majora's Mask clearly is not the size of Earth's moon. Now, the sun that Infinite used isn't the size of Earth's sun, obviously, because otherwise it wouldn't have been falling like in Earth. It would have like swallowed the Earth. For those who don't know, the sun is many, many, many times larger than the Earth. So, and the moon in Majora's Mask was able to be. I mean, that thing was supposed to crash onto like a specific town. So clearly, that's a lot small. That's like a meteor at best. Like that thing was able to be held up by 4 giants, and yes, they're giants, but when you scale them to Link, they're not like they're not like mountain sized or anything. They're just like really, 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 really tall. They're not like they're like 40 feet tall. They're not like 100 feet tall and can crush a town with their hands or something. No, they're not that big. So yeah, it's clearly not as impressive of a feat as it seems, but it is still nonetheless. You're taking a large celestial body and bringing it into the earth, so that's impressive. Um, then like I said, being able to create a world for itself and everything on that moon, that's probably that's pretty impressive too. Now I'm gonna have to get into the analysis here. So I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I think in terms of power output, Infinite has the advantage. Um, just because, like I said, Infinite can more or less almost totally control reality. Um, I don't think there's no way there's no way that like Majora would know how to get around that. Like, oh well, it has to control me for like. There's no reason to know that. Shit, I keep forgetting powers in this. Infinite also has these cubes that he generates, and if you touch one of them, you get trapped inside of it, and you just end up fighting a bunch of enemies inside of it. And you have to, yeah. So, but like I said, Infinite has more or less like a full spectrum over control over reality. Not now. I think it is probably dependent on his actual meaning to do things. Like he has to intend to do things and will them to happen. He can't just he can't just think of something and have it come true. He can't just be like, well, you know, I want the entire universe to be like this, and then snap his finger. Like he has to willfully make things happen. And the reason I think that is generally because when he was created an army to fight the Resistance, you know, he had Shadow and Metal Sonic and Chaos, who are these, you know, very, very powerful beings, and we know he's able to make them actually stronger than their original versions, yet they're all being stopped, you know, they're being beaten up by the multiples by, you know, like Knuckles, Amy, Rouge, Espio, and it's like, if these were as strong as their originals even, they wouldn't be getting beaten up that easily by these characters. So, I feel like, you know, he kind of has to divide his attention to do multiple things, which probably weakens the result. And, you know, like I said, so it is probably dependent on, like, his willpower. If he has to divide his attention amongst multiple things, then it probably, you know, he can't put as much power into it. Now, the big question I had looking at this fight, right? Now, again, you know, Majora is described as a godlike being with godlike powers, but we only know what it can do from what it's done. And it's not like there's a description of its abilities that says specifically what it can do, and we can't just assume it can do anything when it's only done very specific things, and it's been stopped, so we can't assume it can do literally anything if it didn't do that when it could have. So, yeah. So the main question in this fight is, yes, I believe that Infinite has more power output, but can Infinite kill Majora? Now, a lot of people are going to bring up the Fierce Deity mask. Any speedrunner will tell you, yes, that's the most effective way to beat Majora. And that's how most people do it because, well, you know, speedrunning N64 Zelda games is kind of like the way to play it. So, but if you ever face Majora without the mask, you can still do damage to it and beat it. Just not as much. You know, it's just very hard and takes a while to do. So, if Majora is able to take damage, even though the Hero Sword is, or the Master Sword, why did I say Hero Sword? That's from Mega Man. Even though the Master Sword is, you know, a divine weapon, you know, you're using arrows and shit, too. I think it's safe to assume that Majora can take regular damage from regular things, not just divine sources. Because if that's the case, I don't think Infinite can do that, just because, A, is he capable of creating a divine weapon? Or even knowing that that's what it would take? But even if he could learn that that's what it would take to kill Majora, how would he know what constitutes a divine weapon, or what the properties of a divine weapon are? Like, he has to know that in order to create it. He can't just say, oh, divine weapon, appear, and then it happens. Like, he has to know what it is. So, you know, I mean, he doesn't have to know, like, the, you know, atomic properties of it, but he has to know what it means to be a divine weapon in order to, you can't just say divine weapon and have that mean something. Like, no. So, I feel as though, and I'm really trying to hurry this up here, I feel as though Infinite's going to win this, just because I think that Majora and Infinite can both take damage. I feel as though not only does Infinite have just more diversity in having more or less complete control in reality, because of that, his power output is so much bigger, and I feel like he would just have a distinct advantage. Now, again, the other issue is that Majora is known to just, when it has a host, just disregard its host. So if it, disregards the Skull Kid, then its form is limited by general consensus. People believe that its powers are limited by, whether it has a host or not. So if it doesn't have a host, then, it's limited to a physical form, and then I'm, pretty sure I'm going to just kill it then. You can still kill it probably with the host, but I feel like that's what would happen. It would go into a boss mode, and then Infinite would just be like, so yeah, anyway, I feel like Infinite's going to win this. I really hope this video, I don't have to remake this because it's too long. But nonetheless, Rebel Engine 95.